Mom, are you doing well?
It had been about 6 months since my son, John, had moved to Singapore for work, and I finally received a call from him.
I'm doing fine. You sound good too, John.
Hearing my son's voice and feeling reassured, I was about to express my excitement when John excitedly said,
It looks like I'll be able to come back to the US for the end of the year.
"You guys don't have any special plans, right?"
At home, we'll be preparing a feast. It's not that we don't have plans, but it's the usual end-of-year routine.
"I'm looking forward to your holiday cooking, Mom." Thinking about making lots of John's favorites, I suddenly remembered something.
By the way, thank you for sending me $100 every month while you're abroad. I'm saving up little by little.
I finally expressed my gratitude for the monthly allowance. The $100 monthly allowance. Though it might seem a small amount, I was very happy knowing that my son was thinking of us, even a little. However, after a moment of silence, John said,
What? Wait a minute. I've been transferring $2,500 every month, haven't I?
"What? Where did the remaining $2,400 go?" Just then, my husband, Max, returned from work. I, suspecting something odd about my husband recently, decided to confront him. My name is Tamara, 49 years old. Living peacefully with my husband, Max, who is 4 years my senior.
Did you hear from John?
Max asked me when I was preparing breakfast.
Yes, he's doing fine. Why don't you contact John yourself? He'd surely be happy to hear from you.
After graduating from college, my son, John, joined a machinery manufacturer. He had longed to work abroad. This spring, his wish was granted, and he began working in the Singapore office. Worried about my son who had moved far away, Max often asked me about John's well-being. "John finds it easier to talk to you, Tamara. I've been too busy to be involved with anything at home." Saying this, Max hid his face behind the newspaper. While it was true Max hadn't done much at home, it was because he was very busy at work. Now, though, he was able to live a more balanced life with 2 days off each week. However, until 3 years ago, he was so busy with work that there was hardly any time to spend with family.
John understands that you worked hard for the family.
Max's escape from his grueling work life began 3 years ago when he collapsed at work. Rushed to the hospital, he was diagnosed with overwork and had to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. A year before that incident, I had quit my job to care for my mother-in-law. When Max collapsed, my mother-in-law had already passed away, so I could spend all visiting hours by his side.
It's been over 20 years since we married, and this is the first time we've spent every day together.
Max said, looking out the window, perhaps embarrassed.
How about it? Starting to miss work?
Max slowly shook his head.
Reflecting on my life in this hospital room, I realized I have only a few memories with my family. I regret spending all my time working.
Max laughed sadly. I gently rubbed his back.
Thank you for working hard for our family. But don't overdo it anymore. We have enough savings to cover John's tuition, and I want you to take care of yourself from now on.
Looking into my eyes, Max's eyes were moist. Afterward, Max requested a transfer at his company and was moved to his current department.
Would you like to go see this movie tomorrow?
Now with weekends completely free, Max initially struggled with what to do but became brighter as he tried new things. I found it endearing when my usually gruff husband asked me out. What surprised me was that Max got into hiking. Neither of us had ever hiked before, but encouraged by friends who said it was fine for beginners, we went hiking together for the first time. The warm spring breeze swayed the flowers, and sunlight danced on the ground through the leaves. Max, who replied to the chirping of birds and then smiled shyly at me, said, "Is this what they call forest therapy? Nature is amazing. It really is wonderful. Hey, why don't you find out about more hiking trails we could try?" Not just my husband, Max, but I too have been completely charmed by the wonders of nature, and when the weather's nice, we often go hiking together. Our marriage was never in trouble, but ever since Max collapsed and we reevaluated our life, we've come to cherish the time we can spend together, living more peacefully. As the mornings and evenings started to cool down, marking the arrival of autumn, I suggested to Max, "Hey, how about we go see the fall colors in October?" We were both instantly captivated by the autumn scenery of the mountain we happened to see on TV last year. "I'm looking forward to going there together next fall," Max promised, making me eagerly anticipate the arrival of autumn. I had assumed Max would agree without hesitation. However, when our eyes met, Max quickly looked away.
Max? Don't you remember the mountain? We saw it on TV together last year.
Did we? Max said and then left the house without telling me where he was going. What's with him? I was a little upset to know I was the only one who had been excited about a promise made a year ago. While we had our moments of frustration early in our marriage, it had been decades since I last felt angry at Max. So, I was both upset and shaken at the same time. Max is already 53 years old, maybe he genuinely forgot. It's hard to fight age. I wanted to brush it off thinking that, but I started feeling more and more uneasy about Max. On weekends, Max began leaving the house early in the morning by himself. He'd return in the evening, sometimes even after 10 p.m.
Welcome back. You're late.
Yeah, I had some errands. Went out to eat with a friend. Sorry for not calling. His tone was as gentle as always, but he wouldn't meet my eyes and quickly headed to the bathroom. Where had he been? Has he been acting strange lately? I thought about following him but decided against it. We've never been the type to pry into each other's schedules too much. We trusted each other, and that comfort was what made our relationship work. So, as much as I was concerned about Max, I couldn't bring myself to ask anything more. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Max suddenly suggested,
Tamara, maybe you should start working again soon?
I was taken aback by his words. After all, I quit my job to take care of your mother. What kind of way is that to say it? I wanted to lash out but forced a smile instead.
I do want to stay connected and work, of course. But I'm 49 now, and I'm worried if there's anything I can do at this point. Age doesn't matter. The kids are grown, and we don't have to worry about caregiving anymore. Think about it, okay?
As I silently nodded, Max seemed satisfied and quickly went to the bedroom. Something's definitely off. Amidst these uneasy days, I got a call from John.
Mom, are you doing okay? I'm fine. You sound well too, John.
Hearing my son's voice brought me relief, and he excitedly continued.
I might be able to come back to the US for the end of the year.
You guys don't have any special plans, right?
We'll be making a feast. It's not that we don't have plans, but it's the usual end-of-year stuff.
I'm looking forward to your holiday cooking, Mom. As I got excited thinking about making a lot of John's favorites, I remembered something.
By the way, thank you for sending me $100 every month even though you're abroad. I've been saving up little by little.
The $100 monthly allowance. It might seem like a small amount, but I was very happy knowing John was thinking about us. Ever since he was little, John was always worried about his father, who was too busy to relax at home.
I'm gonna buy Dad a great sofa so he can relax at home when I start earning.
John, always so thoughtful, had been saying this since he was in middle school. So, I decided to use John's allowance specifically for buying a sofa, saving up diligently for it. However, after a brief silence, John said,
What? Wait a minute. I've been transferring $2,500, haven't I?
This time, I was the one left in silence. Just then, Max came home from work.
Dad's back. I'll call you back later.
I hurriedly ended the call and confronted Max.
I just got off the phone with John. Is the allowance not $100, but $2,500?
Max instantly became visibly upset.
I just got back from work and you're starting with this? I'm not being loud. I'm just asking something important. Since when did you become so greedy about money?
What's with that attitude? I glared at Max and went back to the room to pull out his bank book. The allowance from John was deposited into Max's account, and he was supposed to withdraw it and give it to me. I had been grateful for the $100 Max gave me without suspecting anything. But seeing the bank statement, I was stunned. Just as John said, $2,500 was being deposited every month. And I found out that the entire amount was being withdrawn. Meaning, out of the withdrawn $2,500, only $100 was given to me, and Max was using the rest of the $2,400 for something else.
Why pretend you didn't know? I wouldn't have been this mad if you had just told me you were using the $2,400 for yourself. Why keep it a secret?
Showing him the bank book, Max clicked his tongue in annoyance. His attitude made my blood boil even more.
What's with that attitude since earlier? Not just today. You've been acting strange lately.
When I confronted him, Max glared back and said something unbelievable.
I'm done with this house. I want a divorce.
Divorce. My world went dark. In our 25 years of marriage, we had never had such a terrible fight, nor had the thought of divorce ever crossed my mind. I was so shocked by Max's declaration of divorce that I silently retreated to my room. Alone in the dark, I tried to sort out my thoughts. Lately, Max hadn't been going out with me, always going somewhere alone. He had also been somewhat distant. And now, he was using most of John's allowance for himself. Could he be cheating? I was overwhelmed with despair. No way, not him. My mind was torn between wanting to believe in Max and his recent strange behavior. I bit my lip to hold back, but tears started flowing freely. Trying not to make a sound, I crawled into bed and ended up crying myself to sleep. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, Max greeted me as if nothing had happened.
Good morning.
My heart was pounding, but Max acted as if yesterday's events were completely forgotten. No way he could be cheating. My clumsy husband couldn't possibly manage an affair. That thought gave me a slight sense of relief until Max, without looking up from his newspaper, said,
I'll be on a business trip for a week next week. I'm leaving Sunday afternoon and will be back Saturday morning.
Okay. A week-long business trip just like that. He must be cheating. Feeling foolish for even a moment of trust in Max. I felt a surge of anger for the betrayal by Max and John. I won't let this go without a fight. I glared at Max, hidden behind his newspaper.
I'll be going then.
On the day of his supposed business trip, Max left the house as usual. I pretended to see him off as usual, but as soon as the front door closed, I hurriedly changed. I dressed in clothes that weren't my style, and put on a hat and sunglasses. Yes, I was going to tail Max and catch him in the act of cheating. I hurried out after disguising myself and found Max hadn't gone far, easily spotting him. He strangely took a detour through a park, taking pictures of flowers, and stopped in front of a cafe we used to frequent, looking nostalgically at its sign. Max's behavior was clearly off. At the train station, he looked around nervously. After a while, a woman approached him. Noticing her, Max's expression softened. They exchanged brief greetings and then disappeared into the station together. Though I had braced myself for the worst and was tailing him to gather evidence, facing the reality left me paralyzed. Since when had I been betrayed? I watched their retreating figures in shock, quietly crying so as not to draw attention. For a week, I pondered my future alone. That's right, he had told me to find a job again. So that's what it was about. He wanted a divorce, so he suggested I find a job to support myself. When had he started thinking about divorce? At least until spring, he had been inviting me on hikes, and I thought we were getting along well. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand what had changed in Max's heart. After over 20 years of life together, in the end, I realized I didn't know anything about my husband. As I mindlessly watched TV, that mountain happened to come on the screen. In about 2 weeks, the foliage will be at its peak, slowly turning red. Dwelling on the past won't change anything. I need to move forward, even if slowly. And I'll go see the fall colors alone. With resolve, I pulled out the divorce papers I had picked up on my way back from tailing him. And then, as planned, my husband returned on Saturday.
I'm home.
His voice was a bit low. Realizing I won't hear it anymore made me feel a fleeting sadness, but I clenched my jaw. This. When Max entered the living room, I handed him the divorce papers without expression. He stared at the papers for a moment, silently put them in his bag, and went into his room. After a while, he came out with a packed duffel bag. This means I can be with Nancy now.
I'll file the divorce papers tomorrow myself. I'll come back for my stuff later, just leave it.
Max said and quickly left. He had been looking down the whole time, so I couldn't see his expression, but his voice was shaking for some reason. You wanted the divorce, Max, so why is your voice trembling? Alone, I cried my heart out. The next day, I stood in front of the company where I used to work, dressed in a suit. My former boss was approaching.
It's been a while. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today.
During the last week, I seriously looked for a job to live on my own. Preferably a full-time position. That's when I thought of the company I left 4 years ago. My boss had told me, "You're always welcome to come back," when I quit. I thought it was just a polite offer, but when I reached out, he said, "Come in for an interview." My boss listened quietly to my story. Then he said, "It's reassuring to have you back." His warm expression and welcoming words relaxed me. "Thank you. I'll do my best." Being needed, I resolved to work hard. I was told I could start any time, so I decided to start working the following week. Familiar colleagues welcomed me back, and I found my place in the workplace. "Just take it easy," my boss said, noting my nervousness after a 4-year break. Though I was divorced and alone, working made me feel not so isolated. Ah, what a week! On Friday, I collapsed onto my bed exhausted. Thanks to my boss's consideration, I managed not to overdo it at work, but still, a week's labor had taken its toll. I fell asleep and didn't wake up until 10 a.m. the next morning.
What a long sleep, haven't done that in decades.
I chuckled at the clock. Then the front door opened. Max and I locked eyes for a moment, feeling awkward.
Your outfit!
Max seemed surprised at my wrinkled skirt and blouse and disheveled hair.
I started working. Got a full-time position at the company I used to work for. I was so tired after just a week, I fell asleep in these clothes yesterday.
I laughed exaggeratedly, and Max's face softened with relief.
That's good.
His quiet voice made me feel indescribably. I'll leave as soon as I've moved my stuff. He seemed indifferent to my feelings, heading straight to his room. What was wrong with me? Up until a few months ago, I thought we were doing well. I thought we'd overcome anything together. I thought I had gotten over it by starting work, but seeing Max brought back memories of happier times, and I couldn't stop crying. I'm going to take a bath. Just leave the key in the mailbox. Not wanting Max to see me cry, I waited in the bathroom for him to leave. I hadn't told John about the divorce yet. Knowing him, he'd drop everything and come back if he knew. But the divorce is a matter between Max and me. I need more time to accept that not noticing Max's feelings was also my fault. So, I decided to wait until I had sorted out my feelings to tell John. Maybe it's time. After a gentle bath, I found Max's belongings were all gone. His things were never many, but the empty room starkly reminded me I was now alone. Then, I noticed a letter left on the table. Tamara, I'm glad you were able to return to your previous job. I've always felt terribly sorry that you had to quit your job to take care of my mother. I don't have the right to say this, but please live happily. Max. Just when I had cleared my head in the bathroom, tears started flowing uncontrollably. This is too selfish. Well, I'll show that even without Max, I can be happy. I washed my face with cold water and vowed to myself in the mirror.
I'll take on this job.
As my intuition returned, my work pace quickened, and I found joy in my job again. Being single, I could freely go out for drinks with colleagues and take solo trips on weekends, leading a fulfilling life in my own way. By December, the seasons had fully changed. On a day when thoughts of Max were becoming scarce, a woman visited my workplace. Hello, my name is Nancy. I was informed of your workplace by your husband and have come to visit today. Hearing the name Nancy made my heart skip a beat. The Nancy and I can finally be together remark Max made echoed in my head. The woman I saw Max meeting at the station 3 months ago, whose face I couldn't see, was evidently in her 30s. Beautiful, stylish, young. Max's type, I see. No wonder he left me for her. Seeing her somehow made everything click into place. Nancy looked concerned.
Please, Tamara, hear me out calmly. Your husband is in critical condition. Could you come to the hospital with me right now?
What? I couldn't comprehend the meaning of Nancy's words.
What are you talking about? After taking Max from me, now you come here with such lies, please stop.
Just when I was starting to find peace, Nancy's unbelievable lie reopened old wounds, and anger bubbled up inside me.
I am Nancy, the end-of-life care advisor for Max. Your relationship isn't what you think.
Nancy handed me her business card with a firm attitude, clearly stating her profession as an end-of-life care advisor. End-of-life care advisor? What? Does that mean Max's critical condition isn't a lie? My composure quickly unraveled. Then my boss came over. Tamara, please go to the hospital with Nancy. Take good care of her, Nancy, he said, ushering us into a taxi he had called. As the taxi started moving, Nancy revealed the truth one by one. Apparently, Max had been feeling unwell since around January and went to the hospital in early April. There, he was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer and given 6 months to live. He never mentioned going to the hospital. I blamed myself for not noticing any signs of Max's illness.
Max said you're the kind of person who'd dedicate her life to caring for others, like you did for his mother. He didn't want you to spend your life caring for him. Family should naturally take care of each other.
Hearing about Max's thoughts made me cry uncontrollably.
Max was incredibly clumsy, wasn't he? When he brought the divorce papers, I even scolded him. They haven't been submitted, so you are still legally his wife.
Nancy showed me the unfiled divorce papers. Seeing my section filled out but not submitted, I broke down crying, not caring who saw. Nancy gently patted my back.
Until summer, he took weekdays off for his appointments, but since September, his condition worsened, and he started going to the hospital even on weekends. He was hospitalized for a week.
I had misconstrued his hospital visits as cheating trips. The truth made me regret not being more understanding. Nancy pulled out a bank statement from the envelope.
He asked me to give this to you.
I was shocked at the amount. Max had been saving most of John's allowance and his own money long before his illness was discovered, thinking he would pass away before me and wanting to ensure I wouldn't face hardships.
Max heard you were saving John's allowance to buy a sofa for him. But he wanted you to buy something for yourself.
So, he lied about the allowance being only $100 to prevent me from buying the sofa? Just a word would have been enough. I was exasperated with Max, but then realized that's just how he was. Unspoken, clumsy, but he cared for me more than anyone else.
Please hurry!
I wanted to look into his eyes once more and convey my feelings. Until we reached the hospital, I prayed fervently that Max was still alive.
This way!
Following Nancy, I entered my husband's hospital room. There, Max lay peacefully asleep on the bed, connected to many tubes. The doctor informed us that he was currently stable due to medication, but his condition could change at any moment. In the 3 months since I last saw him, Max's appearance had drastically changed. His cheeks were sunken, and his skin tone was poor. The thought that he had been fighting this illness alone. I was in shock.
What was the point of our marriage if not to be together until the end?
I grabbed Max's hand tightly and shouted. Then, a single tear rolled down from Max's eyes, and he weakly squeezed my hand back.
Max! It's Tamara! Do you understand?
Max slightly opened his eyes to see me and nodded. Tamara, I'm sorry for keeping my illness a secret. I'm sorry, this was the only way I could think of to spare you from sadness. Speaking seemed to take a lot of effort, but Max managed to apologize properly.
I'll never leave you again. There's so much I want to tell you, so you better listen.
At my words, he nodded with a peaceful expression. Miraculously recovering for a moment, I showed Max a photo. I went to that mountain. Max looked surprised. I can go hiking alone. It's one of my hobbies after all. Max nodded at me and then squinted his eyes.
The fall colors are beautiful. I wish I could have gone with you, Tamara.
Hearing Max's fragmented words, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer.
Look, we're watching it together now. You're right. Thank you, Tamara.
Max kept gazing at the photo of the fall foliage. That evening, John, who had rushed back home, arrived at the hospital room. John, take care of your mom for me. Leave it to me. Dad is the person I respect the most, John said, gripping Max's hand tightly. Hearing his son say such things, Max must have felt content. Later, I learned that Nancy and John had been in contact for about 2 months, and John knew everything about Max's illness, the divorce turmoil, and even where the allowance had been going.
Why didn't you say something sooner? Well, when I understood Dad's feelings for you, I couldn't help but support him. He may be clumsy, but that clumsiness made him seem so cool to me.
Hearing John's words, Max seemed a bit embarrassed. The setting sun cast long shadows of our close-knit family in the hospital room, a sight I'll never forget. Max passed away the next morning, peacefully, as if he were just sleeping. The brief time we spent together as a family, though short, felt like a true miracle. We thanked Nancy over and over for giving us such a beautiful farewell.
Thank you for being so compassionate towards my husband. Without you, we wouldn't have had such a wonderful ending. Now, our family can move forward. Looking ahead, I told Nancy.
With tears in her eyes, Nancy bowed deeply and quietly left the room. My boss also attended the funeral.
You knew, didn't you?
He nodded apologetically.
Actually, when you quit your job 4 years ago, your husband came to me. He asked me to welcome you back if you ever wanted to work again. Of course, I would have waited for you to return anyway.
Max was a wonderfully considerate man. He might have been too clumsy to express himself properly, but that, too, made me love him even more.
John, there's a place I want to take you to.
Once all the arrangements were settled, and we had a moment to breathe, I asked John, who was returning to Singapore the next day, to take me to the architect who built our house. Of course, the purpose was to install a heated floor seating.
Dad wanted you to buy something you wanted more than a sofa.
I shook my head in the car as John mentioned this.
I want the sofa. I wanted to have deep conversations with your father. I'll also sit at the sofa and have long talks with Dad when I come back next time.
The dream of having a sofa that Max left us turned into a place for family gatherings, where we could remember him. 10 months later. During the first autumn without Max, I went to the mountain without hesitation. I need to take lots of photos for Max. Beautiful plants, our usual park, delicious-looking food. I've been capturing everything in photos. And at night, sitting by the sofa, showing the photos to Max's portrait while enjoying a drink became my blissful moment.
Max, the fall colors are beautiful again this year. I'm glad we could watch them together. It feels like you're always by my side, so I'm not lonely at all. I'll enjoy work and hiking for the both of us. Please keep watching over me forever.
I said to Max with a gentle smile. It felt as if he nodded back at me from the photo.